Lukhanyo, good evening to you and welcome. So sedate and managed, would you concur that that's how contained the policy conference was? I mean, even Carl Niehaus's protest for Ramaphosa to go ended up being him himself, a soapbox and a sign.
Yes, that's quite correct, Iman. Advantage Ramaphosa from what we've seen coming from this policy conference. You saw some of the agenda items that speak to his faction getting overwhelming support. And one of those, and chief amongst those actually, is the step-aside rule that the policy conference has resolved that overwhelmingly should be retained and must be strengthened. I think some people might even want to claim that as some kind of victory for themselves, to say that they at least were able to push that it's implemented more fairly, more consistently, and more broadly within the ANC. But it's not a victory at all for them. Cyril Ramaphosa really was able to contain much of the crowd, the way that it was reported that Gwede was able to contain and sedate the participants when they tried to sing Wenzenu Zuma. He was able to quickly close that off. But when they were singing in the closing pro-Ramaphosa song, he was able to allow that and let it flow and let it go and gain more traction within the conference. So you can see how strategic it is to have Gwede on your side when he's chairing some of these meetings, because he's able to sort of shift things more to your favor in the balance of forces, that you get the upper hand. So very good policy conference for Ramaphosa, coming off from a very horrid about 2 to 3 months that he's experienced, politically speaking, with the charges that were laid by Arthur Fraser, with the investigations with the public protector, the threat of a subpoena from the acting public protector as well. So it was a very tough period for Ramaphosa, politically speaking. Yeah. But now we can see that he's starting to regain some of the lost ground going to the conference in December.
And it was interesting in his speech there, stressing the point around organizational renewal and unity, acknowledging their weaknesses, but really on implementing the resolutions that this policy conference made on renewal and rebuilding, talking about having to pursue this with a greater sense of purpose and urgency. And as you say, in a sense, that call in one way or another, was echoed in the way that it was so managed. And that really is the only adjective, I think, Lukhanyo, I can latch onto, the kind of way in which it was managed, so to speak. But I want to come to some of the big policy outcomes. We spent a lot of time in the run-up to this policy conference looking at the ANC's policy document. Of course, I was chatting to Mbulelo just a short time ago. We didn't talk about this question on air, but the transformation of the judiciary, not a point that really came up in this policy conference, and some might have expected to have come up, given the travails, both with the judiciary and the political complex in South Africa. Maybe you just want to make a quick point on that before we look at your takeouts on the biggest and most significant policy points at this conference.
So that's one of the challenges that you will have with the ANC, Iman, is that sometimes they get overwhelmed by what the headline-grabbing issues become, that they forget or neglect to look at the more substantive issues that they face as an organization, but also that the country is currently facing. And the transformation of the judiciary is one of those. The state of the judiciary is one of those. The sustained, conflicts between office bearers and former office bearers with the judiciary outside of a courtroom. And this is to speak about it in, the battle of ideas and the contestation of the political space. And you see that even Chief Justice Zondo has to descend into the arena to come and defend the judiciary against what he perceives to be attacks on the judiciary. And you see the people that have done that attack, perceived to have done that attack, Mr. Sisulu. You hear the sentiments that were expressed by the new chairperson of KZN, Duma, just last weekend at the provincial conference of the ANC in KZN. So you get those issues that are there, and you would think the ANC would come up to sort of give direction as a leader of society that it claims to be on some of these more substantive issues that pose a threat, to to the fabric of society, really. You look at what President Thabo Mbeki said, that we're facing the possibility of our own Arab Spring in this country. And I think a lot of other people have been saying that way back since 2018, when you started to see this undercurrents of dissent and discord that were starting to ferment, to say that there's real challenges within the country. And those things are not really looked at in really great detail by the ANC. You have them focused on some of the issues that are headline grabbing, but really don't move the needle in terms of what society needs and the stability going forward that the country needs. And the judiciary is really one of those, Iman.
We were reflecting over the last few days, Lukhanyo, about the distance in time between this conference and the important elective conference at the end of the year. And it seems, given, again, the events of this particular one, the clamping down on any kind of dissent or embarrassment, frontward-facing embarrassment for the party in the eye of the public, that those, who might have felt suppressed, or those who might have felt that their issues weren't ventilated in the way that they wanted to be, or whose opposition might have been quelled or thwarted very quickly, would find energy and create some momentum in the months between now and December. Do you think that these are going to be possibly the most tumultuous months for the ANC internally as a party between now and the national conference?
The answer to that is a big yes and a big no, Iman. The big no comes from the fact that Cyril seems to have gotten everything, politically speaking, tied up neatly on his way to the national conference. All the numbers seem to be with him. You look at how KZN and Limpopo were sort of isolated in their call to have the step-aside resolution scrapped. So there really isn't a significant challenge to the presidency of Ramaphosa, currently speaking. Now, there are the challenges that are still simmering in the background. You look at the charges on Phala Phala, you look at the investigation by the potential charges on Phala Phala, the investigation by the PP. You look at the Integrity Commission that is led by what I describe as a very eccentric George Mashamba, whose outcomes you can never really predict with some level of certainty. You look at how he handled the issue with the Deputy Minister of Finance, Masonyo, and some of the findings there, no one really you thought were possible. He asked for Masonyo to be removed from the School of the O.R. Tambo School of Politics. He asked for him to step aside. He asked that he's too young, he can come back when he's matured. And you're talking about someone who's probably like 47 years of age. So George Mashamba can be a bit eccentric with the Integrity Commission of his. So their outcomes are very unpredictable in what they could say. And remember, they've asked for a president to step aside before. Before Jacob Zuma stepped aside, the Integrity Commission of George Mashamba had actually asked for him to step aside, and that was the recommendation that they have. So Cyril Ramaphosa will still have to contend with these issues around Phala Phala as he marches towards national conference. Yeah. If he's exonerated on these three, or no charges really come up from these three, then it's game Cyril Ramaphosa come the national conference in December, because politically speaking, he seems to have all the numbers. He was able to flip Free State that went to the last conference under Ace Makhashule, and it's now under Ramaphosa ally, Tukwana, who seems to have really been able to deliver the Free State to the faction of Cyril Ramaphosa. So politically speaking, Cyril Ramaphosa seems to have it neatly tied up, and except for these three that I would call his Achilles heel, the issue of Phala Phala.
Well, the months ahead are certainly going to be very interesting, Lukhanyo, and we'll be looking at them together. Thank you very much for your interpretation and analysis this evening. We appreciate it. Lukhanyo Vangqa.